What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. The Utah Utes are up next before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough that schedule is. Let's take a look at what Utah did in 2023. Here were my projections and predictions last year for Utah. My projection had them at 9-3, and then my prediction for them was 8-4. So I was a little bit different there with my projection and prediction last year for this team. Utah, of course, going 8-4 last year in the regular season of 2023. So I was right on the money here with Utah's prediction last season. But if you count their bowl game loss at the end of the year, this team officially went 8-5 overall. And a lot of Utah fans think this was a very disappointing season for Utah, but it really wasn't just about the overall record. It was really about the schedule for Utah last year. Here was a look at that schedule from last year for Utah. You look at their non-conference schedule. They played both Florida and Baylor here in the non-conference, two Power 5 teams here, both in the first 2 weeks of the season. They were able to win both of those non-conference games. But that's a very tough non-conference schedule when you're going up against Florida and Baylor, two Power 5 teams here to begin the season. And then you look at their Pac-12 schedule. They had a very tough schedule in the Pac-12 last year. Had some tough road games with Oregon State, USC, Washington, and Arizona. And then you look at the 4 losses last year for Utah. They lost to Oregon State, of course, on the road. Lost to Oregon here at home. That game was not even really that close. And then Washington and Arizona here, both back-to-back road games here in the month of November. So those were the 4 losses last year for Utah. And again, they had a very tough schedule in the Pac-12 last year. They had some very tough road games. But now changes here for Utah in 2024. They are now officially heading to the Big 12 Conference. So let's now look ahead to that schedule for 2024. Here is the schedule for Utah for 2024. Before we go game by game, let's take a look at who Utah will play in the non-conference this upcoming season. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play Southern Utah and Utah State here on the road. So not a very tough non-conference schedule at all here for Utah compared to last year. And they will play a couple of non-conference games here, and the rest of the games are pretty much Big 12 opponents and Big 12 conference games as well. So that's the non-conference schedule here for Utah in 2024. Again, they play Southern Utah and Utah State here on the road. So let's go back to the schedule now and go game by game here for Utah. They will start things off here on August 29th against Southern Utah here. That'll be a home game to kick off the season. And that game is going to be on a Thursday night, we assume. So that's a weeknight game there to kick off the season. And then after that, they do open up Big 12 play here against Baylor at home on September the 7th. And then they play Utah State here on the road on September the 14th. And then they play Oklahoma State here on the road on September the 21st. So you got back-to-back road games here in the month of September here for Utah. Not a very tough back-to-back road game trip, though, for this Utah team. And then they come back at home. They'll play Arizona here at home on September the 28th. And then they close things out here in the month of September. They'll get a bye week here at the beginning of the month of October in that first weekend as well. They come out of the bye week. They'll play Arizona State here on the road on October 12th. Then it's TCU here at home on October 19th, and Houston here on the road on October 26th. And then they get another bye week here to close things out in the month of October. The bye week comes here in the first weekend in the month of November. They'll play BYU here at home on November 9th, and then it's Colorado here on the road on November 16th. And then they come back at home to play Iowa State here on November 23rd. And then they close things out here with UCF on the road here on November 29th. And that game is, of course, going to be on a Friday. So that's the schedule for Utah in 2024. Not a very tough schedule compared to last year. It's definitely a better schedule. Yes, you do got some tough road games on here, but Oklahoma State is definitely one of their toughest road games on this schedule. I think Colorado, you can probably throw that game in there as a tough road game environment, but Utah should be able to compete in all these games that you're seeing on the schedule. So let's now get a projection here for Utah for 2024. This is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. And this is the scale I use here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, we count those games as automatic losses, 20% games in the orange. Utah will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs in those games at 20% in the orange. 40% games in the yellow, they'll be heavy underdogs in by about a touchdown. 50-50 games will stay in the white. Games I think can go either way. 60% games in the purple are games where Utah will be favored by at least a touchdown. 80% games here in the blue, they'll be favored by a couple touchdowns. And then the 99% games here in the green, these are pretty much the guaranteed wins here and the easy wins here for Utah by, more than 3 touchdowns. So we'll start with those easy wins here for Utah at 99% here in the green. And when I look at the schedule, you only got one easy win here on the schedule, and that's Southern Utah here on August 29th. This is the only easy game that Utah has on the schedule. Southern Utah should be a game where Utah will be favored by more than 3 touchdowns, and they should be favored by at least over 95%, and they should be able to win this game pretty easily. So we count the green game as an automatic win there for Utah. Let's now go to the next percentage here, the games where Utah will be favored by a couple touchdowns at double digits here in the blue. And I also got one game on here in the blue, and that's Utah State here on the road on September the 14th. I know this is a road game. It should definitely be in the purple here for Utah, but I'm going to stick with it and put it here in the blue. Just because Utah is the more talented team here. I know this game is on the road, but I think Utah is the more talented team here compared to this Utah State team. Utah State is pretty much, a group, like a really good group of 5 team, but again, like I said, I think Utah is the more talented team here, and that's the reason why I'm favoring Utah here by at least a couple of touchdowns and also slash double digits here in this game. Let's go to the games now where Utah will be favored by a touchdown at 60% in the purple, and that's almost the majority of their schedule here. Baylor, Arizona, Arizona State, TCU, Houston, BYU, and Colorado. I think all these games that you're seeing in the purple are definitely trap games here for Utah, but I think they'll be favored by at least a touchdown in all these games that you're seeing in the purple. I know Baylor gave Utah a scare last year. That definitely should be a 50-50 game, but Baylor is a team that I don't know how good they're going to be just based off of where they were last year. Arizona, kind of the same way. They do have a first-year head coach. I think they'll be pretty good, but I just don't really know how good they're going to be with a first-year head coach. And then Arizona State, TCU, Houston, BYU, and Colorado. These are all teams that were not very good last year, so I think you can favor Utah here by at least a touchdown in all these games that you're seeing in the purple. And again, these purple games are not guaranteed wins, but they're definitely trap games, in my opinion, here for Utah in their first year in the Big 12. Because, like I said, the Big 12 is going to be a lot competitive this year, and it's also going to be a very competitive conference where teams are going to beat up on each other. So I think Utah will be favored in all these games in the purple by at least a touchdown. And then the rest of the 3 games here in the white, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and UCF here on the road. Pretty much these are all my 50-50 games here for Utah that I think can go either way. Oklahoma State on the road is definitely one of their toughest games here on the schedule. That's definitely a 50-50 game, though. I think both of these teams are pretty even in talent-wise. And then Iowa State here I think will be a very competitive team this year. They were very competitive last year, and that's the reason why I'm making this one as a 50-50 game. And then UCF here on the road, they were pretty much the only newcomer last year that made it to a bowl game out of all those Big 12 teams in the newcomers list last year. And UCF did make a lot of progress, and they also had some big wins last year. So I think that UCF game could definitely be a trap game there for Utah at the end of the year. But these are 3 games where I think Utah will be 50-50 games here. These are the games that I think can go either way here in the Big 12 for this Utah team. So let's now get a projection here, a projected record here for Utah. And again, this is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count that one green game as an automatic win. We also count the blue game as a win, but it's not a guaranteed win. It's a slight win here for Utah, but it's still a win either way. Then we average out all the 60% games here in the purple, average them out at 60%, and then you split those 50-50 games here, and then you average them out at 50%. And the overall projected record that you get for Utah for 2024 comes out to be 10-2. So 10-2 is the projection here for Utah for 2024. And like I said, this schedule is not very tough for Utah compared to last year. Plus, with Cam Rising coming back at quarterback, this Utah team could be a very dangerous team next season. If he stays fully healthy, Utah could definitely be in the 12-team playoff next year. Not saying they're going to make it in there as of right now, but this is going to be a good Utah team. I think they'll have a chance to be a top 10, top 15 team as well. So watch out for the Utah Utes in 2024. But my projection for them is 10-2 for 2024. Let me guys know what you think about Utah here. What do you think is their best case scenario and worst case scenario for 2024? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.